Hotep, brothers and sisters. Hotep. It's indeed my pleasure to be here. I've heard Brother Dadisi expound on the drums. I have never heard him expound verbally, so I am anxiously awaiting today's presentation. In the meantime, however, let us please stand to pour libation. Our scholars research and report that thousands of years ago, celestial bodies laden with water filled the heavens. These bodies released their water, which fell to earth, and quenched the earth, and gave rise to new life. Our ancestors ritualized these events in the pouring of libation, symbolically quenching the earth and renewing life. In that tradition, we begin today by pouring libation. To our first ancestor, that creative energy, that God force, that from heart, mind, and the word brought into existence a universe, one innately spiritual and replete with divine order, we pour libation. To our ancestors who were the beginning of human history, who entered this realm as the first humans on the face of the planet, mothers and fathers of all humanity, we pour libation. To our ancestors who meted out the first semblances of civilization and defined the cosmic relationship between man and the universe, and to that God force by any and all names, we pour libation. To our ancestors of the African interior who nurtured civilization and brought it to its zenith in Kemet, who erected great monuments to that civilization, who left a legacy of thousands of years of autonomy and large footprints for us to uncover and refill, we pour libation. To our ancestors of the first Exodus, who took language, culture, and spiritual principles out of Africa and peopled the world, we pour libation. To our ancestors who, after millennia, found themselves besieged by retro civilizations, kidnapped, shackled, forced through the gate of no return, enslaved in diasporas across the world, we pour libation. To our ancestors who chose to end their lives rather than lose their freedom, and to those ancestors who emerged on the other end of the Middle Passage, who chose the long way back home through enslavement, lynchings, discrimination, indoctrination, miscegenation, miseducation, we pour libation. To our ancestors who were left at home, the very young, the aged, the infirm, who were left to reinvent themselves, depleted of their human resources, who were enjoined by us in the diasporas, both objects of a global ma'afa that ravaged a continent and ruptured the soul of a people, we pour libation. To our ancestors of indomitable spirit who lived through legislated amnesia, forbidden on pain of death to speak our language or practice our culture, who resisted the effects of the march around the tree of forgetfulness and retained in the very fiber of their being remnants of our story, we pour libation. To our scholars, our teachers, our ministers, our researchers, our elders, who work tenaciously to restore our collective memory, to recover, reconstruct, and resurrect our culture, to re-wing the phoenix, we pour libation. And to all of us, the living ancestors, who are again coming to know the blessings of a time perspective, to know that the moments of enslavement were minuscule and are made inconsequential by the backdrop of our vast history, we pour libation. And to our children, our unborn, our progeny, our cultural and spiritual heirs, our ancestors in perpetuity, who are the repositories of our wisdom and our creative energies, who must continue this cosmic story of seasons, who must know that despite our separate histories, we have a common history and a prevailing unity, who must understand, as we are coming to understand, that our future hinges on the question to be African or not to be. To our children, we pour libation. Ashe.
Ashe. Repeat after me, please. We are an African people.
We are an African people.
We will remember the humanity,
We will remember the humanity,
glory and sufferings
glory and suffering
of our ancestors, and honor the struggle of our elders.
and honor the struggle of our elders.
We will strive to bring new life and new values to our people.
We will strive to bring new life and new values to our people.
We will have peace and harmony among us.
We will have peace and harmony among us.
We will be loving, sharing, and creative.
We will be loving, sharing, and creative.
We will work, study, and listen so we may learn.
We will work, study, and listen so we may learn.
We will learn so we may teach.
We will learn so we may teach.
We will cultivate self-reliance.
We will cultivate self-reliance.
We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland.
We will struggle to resurrect and unify our homeland.
We will raise many children for our nation.
We will raise many children for our nation.
We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage.
We will have discipline, patience, devotion, and courage.
We will live as models to provide new directions for our people.
We will live as models to provide new directions for our people.
We will be free and self-determining.
We will be free and self-determined.
We are an African people.
We are an African people.
Together we will win.
Together we will.
Yes.
Whatever. Okay. I guess first of all, I'd like to give praise and thanks to our ancestors, but also in special recognition to my prime teacher, Dr. Alpha Lagan, director and developer of Black Gnostic Studies and Aquarian Spiritual Center, who's probably a unrecognized hero of our modern times, and that he teaches in the ancient ways, and that he doesn't really teach to get external recognition, but he does internal work. And I really would recommend all of those who have not heard him to make your way there, because he's 91 years old at this point in time, and probably will only be here for a certain limited amount of time. And it would be great to get the personal experience of him, because then you may even appreciate what I do more. In terms of, I'm a second generation of Black Gnostic Studies, and so I try to give the information out as I was sitting in the seat, and where he teaches from the old way, which means that whenever you come in, that's where you start, and it's a 20-year course, and so you got to come in for the long haul. And if you're not coming in from the long haul, fine, but you have to understand, to really get the real knowledge, you have to be consistent over a long period of time. And I started studying with him back in 1971, and am now just beginning to understand what it is that I'm trying to understand. And I definitely want to say that the knowledge and information is the foundation for liberation. because liberation is based upon the wisdom teachings, because our civilization, our culture was based upon the wisdom teachings. Everything that came out of Kemet, out of Africa, is based upon the spiritual knowledge that's been passed on through initiation process. And so if we're going to build anything that is truly African-centered, that is going to truly be lasting and not reactionary, we're going to have to go back and recondition our minds and our consciousness, because the war is a war of mind, of ideas. We are being held captive by ideas and thinking. Once we transform our consciousness, we will transform the world. And so in that, I will start off with number one. Just try to, I got about an hour, so we got a pen? Okay. So all I'm going to be able to do is really give you an overview and an outline. I do have some handouts will give you some key information. But as Brother Reverend Mary Cartwright said, the only way you're going to actually attain the knowledge is you have to go through the struggle. It is the struggle of wrestling with the knowledge that the transformation comes about. You will not become transformed by being spoon-fed or by just following someone. You have to personally wrestle with the knowledge. And it's through wrestling with the knowledge, literally, that you become transformed. The same concept as when, who was that wrestled with the angel? Right. It was through the wrestling with the angel. Really, he grabbed him around his thigh, right? If you understand metaphysically, each part of the body is allocated to one of the astrological signs. And the thigh is equated to what area of the astrology? Do we know? The thigh is related to Sagittarius. Key word for Sagittarius is I see. Sagittarius deals with philosophy, law, and religion, and the higher mind. So again, words to the wise. Anyway, the point is, it's through the wrestling, struggling with the philosophy, with the knowledge, with the higher mind, that we become transformed. And so again, I'm going to start off talking about, I'm going to do 4 phases. I'm going to talk about time and space, where we are within time and space, because by understanding where we are within time and space creates pattern. And pattern then reflects consciousness. And so if we understand where we are within time and space, we'll understand what time it is, and then we'll understand also what it is we're supposed to do, but also why we're here. Because all of us are here in a certain time and space because there's work to be done. And so if you just look around your environment and you see, I see, what do you see that needs to be done? That will let you know what you're supposed to do. Because the inside of yourself is tied in to the spiritual or the universal. And it knows, they say the soul knows. It says that we are souls evolving through bodies. Understand what I'm saying? We are souls evolving through bodies. So bodies are nothing but a vehicle for the evolvement of our soul or spiritual self. And so it's the soul that knows. And your soul is your inner self, your spiritual self, your intuitive mind. Your intuitive mind is the voice of the soul. So then by one tuning in to the intuitive mind, you can know. That means that your soul or your spiritual self is always communicating to you 24/7. The only thing that blocks you from recognizing this is your consciousness. Where's your attention focused on? Most of our attention is focused on the external as opposed to the internal. It's the internal that is the real, the external is the illusion. Because we're spiritual beings evolving through matter. And again, it's reflective thought that evolves knowledge or wisdom. Key word, reflective thought. How much time do we think or spend reflecting on our experience? These are keys. Because most of us are so focused on reacting to situations, we can't reflect and really hear the truth of what we are reacting or responding to. So I'm going to talk about time and space, then I'm going to talk about the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries in terms of what that structure was about. Then I'm going to break down share with you the issue of the virtues, because the virtues condition your moral or ethical nature, or they condition the heart. And it represents the Queen's chamber. Because without conditioning the heart, you cannot deal with knowledge and power correctly, because knowledge is truly power. True knowledge is literal power. Because you can literally then manipulate your physical environment and create all kinds of phenomena. Literally, not just figuratively. But if your heart has not been conditioned, then as you acquire knowledge, you will abuse that knowledge. That's why they had a process of elimination to prove the character of those who could gain the knowledge, because you can be very deadly. As we see now that is happening to the planet, you have individuals who have knowledge without the ethical or moral code, and we're actually literally destroying ourselves. And then the final piece will come to that, will then be hopefully do some introductory insight until the 7 liberal arts and sciences of harmony, mathematics, geometry, astronomy, rhetoric, grammar, and logic, and give some basic understanding of what they're really talking about metaphysically or esoterically or internally, not what they're teaching in the school system. Our school or educational systems focus on what we call the exoteric or the outer knowledge. They just deal with the what. How many things, how big, how large, how volume, but they don't deal with the why. Because to deal with the why is to deal with the cause of things and the purpose. And so start off as where are we within time and space, and I want to share some things with you, because there is a very simple paradigm that once we understand this very simple paradigm, we can understand the fundamental force and operation or principles of life. And the fundamental paradigm is based upon the Trinity, or the three: action, reaction, and synthesis, which is, you can say, father, mother, and offspring, or they say child, primary trinity, or you can say initiate, sustain, and transform. We see transformation now as being dead, because it's one thing so-called he dies. So there's no really such thing as death. There's only transformation, because nothing dies. So then if we understand this, which we did traditionally, we had a whole different understanding about the whole circle of life, as opposed to the European only sees halves because he's separated. Because when they got isolated in the glacial periods and their pineal gland calcified, it shut them off from the internal spiritual realm. Now they can be reconditioned, but that's a whole other process, which, if we understand energetics, because everything is energy, everything is magnetic, then we also understand that a smaller electromagnetic field becomes polarized to the same frequency of a greater electromagnetic field. Which means if people of color are the minority of the planet, it's really our problem in terms of allowing the planet to be the way it is. Because by us being disunited, it scatters our energy, which then allows for a smaller force that is united to polarize or direct the energy of the planet. Reflect on what I'm talking about. Also relative to our community. If the community is fragmented, if you have a small, tightly united and organized force, focus around a central key idea, that key idea will then polarize the other elements in that community, and it can become the little motor or the little fire that sets the big fire. Now, relative to this, there's three levels in creation. All creation is based upon duality. Because, and I'm going to give you keys. I can only give you some keys. And again, if you follow up on these keys, you will have great benefits. And what I'm saying is Stolen Legacy is a master publication. Because people don't really get into the ideas that he has documented in that volume of work. And I'm saying this to say Memphite theology, review Memphite theology. I mean, really reflect on and break it down mathematically and diagrammically, and you will understand what the purpose of creation is, where things came about. And the point I'm saying is originally you have unconscious, which is really the blackness.
That's right.
If you look at Memphite theology, right, in the beginning of things was the void, the blackness, the nothing, the noon. But inside the noon or the blackness were four pairs of energies or principles. You know, you had obscurity, infinity, boundlessness, etc. But the point is that you had these four pairs or eight that existed in the darkness, in the blackness, which means that order is inside of chaos. There is order inside of chaos. The only thing is your ability to perceive it. When you cannot perceive it, then things are chaotic. Once you can perceive the inner dynamics in the thing, then its creation can come out of that. Again, understand certain key ideas, because we are now in a chaotic time. But what is that really telling us? If we understood our own teachings, we understand that so-called apparent chaos is actually pre-creation. Which means, pre-creation means we're getting ready to create something. So as opposed to us looking at what is being transformed, we think it's death, it's transformation, we should be thinking about where's the creation moving to. So out of the unconscious, and this also is universal because it's true for us as human beings, because we start out as fools and become wise through experience. Children start out being unconscious and become more conscious. Civilizations start out becoming unconscious because what? In the scenario about being in the Garden of Eden, we were not conscious of our nakedness. All of these are symbolism talking about consciousness, the development of mind or consciousness, not literal people walking around in a field, although literally African people were operating in that situation. Okay. But anyway, I'm gonna drop a lot, but there is a pattern to what I'm talking about. So then you move from the unconscious to the conscious. The unconscious level is also the instinctual level. It's also the elemental level. The conscious level is the individual level. Watch it, I'm moving fast. Also, you can deal with the ego, right? Then you move to a third level, which is superconscious, called cosmic conscious, universal, spiritual, divine, etc. Consciousness. So, humanity as a body, because when they talk about Adam wasn't an individual person. Adam represents the human species as an entity evolving. So Adam is all of humanity evolving from an unconscious state to a conscious state to a superconscious state. The elemental or instinctual level was the African experience, because we're the seed people, right? We're the foundation. If you look at traditional life, we identified to the collective. We wore the same clothes, each group had the same markings, etc. Then as civilization evolved, the opposite of the unconscious was the conscious, which the ultimate in individualism and egoism is European culture.
That's right.
I'm also saying this so we can stop being so reactive to our experience, because our experience is a part of a greater evolutionary process. See, nothing happens in creation that's not a part of a greater purpose. When they say there's a master plan, that ain't just some rhetoric. It's true. But the thing is, because we're so conditioned, it focuses our mind on a reactive level, as opposed to understanding where we are in time and space, so then we can focus on the next level or where we're moving to. And I'm stating that to say that if you take a timeline and you say roughly, just say humanity is 1 million years old, and you break that in half to 500,000, 250,000, what is it, 125,000, 75,000, 50, boo, boo. You couldn't even put a line across the American experience. The American experience for 400 years would not even fit perceptibly on this timeline. So why then are we reacting to this, not even a blinking of our experience in terms of how we're reacting, how we're relating?
Break it down, bro.
What we have to do is we have to expand our consciousness and understand, well, what was going on all this time? Yes. People were living, dying, curing diseases, traveling over the world, plotting the stars, the seas, all these things. But it's a part of the psychological warfare. To focus your mind in this is mean that you have amnesia. It's like if you have a hard drive, right? And you only got what? 1 megabyte you using in that, and somebody else has got a gigabyte. Well, who's gonna be able to out-manipulate the next person? So they're aware of this, but we're not aware of it. And again, consciousness becomes reality. Oh yeah. Okay. Consciousness becomes reality. So the point is the purpose of initiation, the purpose of the mystery system was to evolve your consciousness to where your reference point expanded. So now the issue is, if we now are at the experience of we're at the maximum degree of individualism, separatism, materialism, and now we're moving now toward the third level, which is superconsciousness, cosmic consciousness, universal consciousness. So you have action, reaction, because the European experience is a reaction of the human race migrating over the planet, getting caught behind the glaciers, becoming transformed in that law of scarcity and survival of the fittest, and then migrating back down into the tropics and then reacting from that kind of perspective. And so that's an action and a reaction. Now it has a purpose to play, because at this point in time, the focus on materialism has hardwired the planet, which means now a common idea can simultaneously permeate the planet. Which means if we understand what that means and understand that we're the dominant force on the planet, that means that we have the capacity and the responsibility. Key word is responsibility. To unite ourselves, to move forward, to bring harmony and these kind of ideas back to the planet. So, what time is it? Right now we are moving astronomically out of a Piscean age, which is the key word, I believe, based upon blind faith, right? The whole image of the fishes and what that really means. Now we're moving into the age of Aquarius. The symbolism of Aquarius is a human pouring water out of a pitcher. The waters of heaven represents the knowledge, the divine knowledge that revitalizes the desert, or the thirsty, or those who are in need of knowledge. The waters of life, which is the true knowledge. The symbolism, this is a galactic time or a cosmic time that's going to last over 2,160 years. So we are in a transition period from one age to another. So that means that we're at the end of one time, and we're in the threshold to the beginning of another time. So we're at the end of one world and the beginning of another world. It deals with consciousness. People are thinking it's literal. But it's consciousness. We're talking about another level of consciousness. And there's certain key words. The key word for Aquarius is, I know. Knowledge. Just look at the literature and see what's going on. See what the key word is. Even on the street, they're saying what? Street knowledge. Science. Psychically, we are picking up the energies that are coming down. Is registering on our consciousness, but because we have not been initiated, we can't interpret them correctly. That's why initiation, establishing initiation schools which really these rites of passage programs are the embryonic systems for the initiation of the next generation. But again, because we still see ourselves separate, we don't organize ourselves with appropriate division of labor to maximize our effort. Because we're still functioning with this individual egotistical consciousness. Well, we have to move to the cosmic superconscious and the universal consciousness. Because as we move to operate from these characteristics, we will then be fed by the cosmos because we're operating in time, in cosmic time. If we maintain this level of consciousness, we will be acting in the summer like it's winter. You understand? So if you plant in the wrong season, you're not going to harvest the right crop. But if you plant in the right time, nature itself will grow the crop. So we need to understand what time it is. So this is just some general factors, but the other key thing is, in terms of Aquarius, Aquarius is also the age of revelation. It's the age where the knowledge that was held by a few will become known to the many. Because it's the age of human or humanity, where humanity will know. And so if you look around yourself, knowledge is permeating everywhere. So that's just one key in terms of what time it is, and also that there's a purpose to everything. We have to use the wisdom of the past, but we got to focus on where we're going to take it to the future. All right. So now I have some handouts. This is an article that was in one of the issues of the Knowledge Broker, because somebody hand these out, hand those out. And what these handouts are on is talking about the mystery system. You have the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries. I'm not going to really read this because of time. I'll just go through it. In actuality, the mystery systems evolved really from the woman. Because the original mystery in life, in the human family, was the woman. Because it was dealt with the mystery of creation, the mystery of life. You know, how was she able to do this? We did not know. And to a certain degree, we still don't really understand. We can deal with the mechanics of it, but the higher purpose and the higher dimensions of this, we still don't really understand. But the first mystery was the mystery of creation, was the mystery of the woman or the female. Yes. There's not any more? I only had 50. He told me 50. Okay. And so out of this, when the woman became of age, which means when the woman had her first bloodletting or first period, she was taken off by the elder women into the forest, into a bush school, and she was trained in the roles and responsibilities of womanhood, because she now could bring another life into being. And so those were the first rites of passage. Then later the men said, hey, well, you know, we need to get our part on. And so we then duplicated that in terms of having men's rites of passage. But the female in the archetype or the primary pattern for divinity, for community, was the woman. And so we need to understand that. And I always say this too, in terms of men need to really understand our real role in the world. Because we're really like worker bees or drones that's to secure the perimeter so that the home, the woman, the womb can be protected so the life can maintain itself. You know, really. That does not belittle the brothers, because you got to be on your job to maintain that, you know, because in relationship is what? The scales or the balance. So if you got this powerful black woman, it's going to take an equal powerful black man to maintain that harmony. So the badder the woman is, the badder brother got to be to hang there. So don't take nothing from you. Right. But we get caught up in the European view of manhood, because the European, read Pre-Colonial Black Africa by Diop, and also Civilization of Barbarism. He really goes into the psychology of the original clan and survival mechanism of the European. To where the European, because of the law of scarcity, living in the snow, the smallest survival unit became the order, which was the male who could go out and bust things upside the head with big clubs and stuff. And then he had a female that for the perpetuation of the species and for sexual pleasure. But she was a property. Where if you go into Africa, it was based upon the female, and it was based on a gatherer society, and it was collective. Those same basic principles are the same guiding principles for modern day capitalism. We need to understand that. There's an article in Knowledge Broker that talks about that also. But read Pre-Colonial Black Africa and also Civilization of Barbarism as a number. Then Urugu and a lot of other ones bring that up into modern psychology. But we need to really understand this, not intellectually, but we have to really kind of internalize this and transform how we see the dynamics that we're involved in if we're going to adjust and to neutralize and to go into development. I'll stop there. So the next piece, I was talking about the lesser mysteries and the greater mysteries. The lesser mysteries deal with the conditioning of your lower self. And in the basic outline, humans, we have 7 functions. You have a 4 and a 3. So you have a physical, then you also have an energetic, which they call etheric, which is really electromagnetic. Electromagnetic, you got to figure it out. Then you have an emotional, and you have a mental, which is a lower mental. Then you have a higher mental, which they call abstract. Then you have intuitional. And then you have pure will, which they also call the divine. This is actually spiritual. It also will show you that spiritual is one step below divine. Divine is when you're actually totally at one with divine will. There's no separation between you and divine will. This is when you're totally at a state of total illumination. But the point is, you have 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. The 4 is the physical, or the lower self. In actuality, the lower self equals 666. This is the beast. The beast is the lower self, your animal nature. People who are ruled by the physical desires, by the emotional desires, by the lower mental. The lower mental is when you focus on things. How many things, how big, how bright, how this, the external information or data that one gets. This society is basically governed by the lower nature. And so in one sense, when Elijah Muhammad called the white man the devil, in a metaphysical sense, he was correct because they follow the dictates of the lower self, which is the devilish side of ourselves, because it always keeps us tied to the physical plane. The physical plane is the illusion. It's not the real. And so, but then they take things literal, so people go around looking for people with 666 tattooed on their head or something. But what are they talking about? What's in your head, your mind, your thoughts? So if your thoughts are functioning from this, you do have 666 on your brain, on your mind. The higher level is the Trinity or the 3. Higher mental or abstract is when you start understanding the whys of things. The lower mental is the whats of things. The higher mental is in why is that true? Why is that happening? So you start dealing with higher forms of philosophy, with the deeper relationship between art and culture, the deeper functions of science in terms of how the science is a part of creation. You go to the intuitional plane. The intuitional plane is really the higher operation of the emotional. The lower emotions, because it's feeling. The lower level ties you down to, what they call the fetters or the deadly sins of jealousy, hate, envy, gluttony, greed, laziness, etc. But on a higher level, intuition is really the voice of the soul, because you know when you feel something. You have all kind of data in your mind, but you feel when things are really right. But what usually happens is when your intuition tells you things, you let your lower mind talk you out of it. The lower mind is the conditioned self. We have been conditioned a certain type way. So that's how we don't operate in accordance with our higher selves. Anyway, Divine will is basically the pure laws of the universe. So you have the 3 and the 4, the lower self and the higher self. And I can also start showing you how 3 and the 4, it also is the basis of the pyramid, right? Whoop, how am I doing this here? Let's do it like this. You got the foundation, which is a square, and the sides, which are a trine. So you got the foundation is based upon the 4 because we are spirit evolving through bodies. So the lower self is the vehicle for the learning and experience and the raising of consciousness of the higher self. So we're actually in the noon or in the blackness. All potentiality was resident. But potentiality then, the opposite of potentiality is what? If you're potential, what's the opposite of potential? Actual. So then, that then generated its opposite. The potential is now moving to actualize itself. So that means then the potential of creation is now moving to create bodies to where it can become conscious and fulfill its own potentiality. So we're on this journey. We're spirits evolving through physical bodies to eventually come to super or cosmic consciousness. And the goal of initiation or the mysteries was to accelerate the process of the normal evolutionary process to where one could then evolve and become super cosmic or spiritual consciousness. So now let's talk a little bit about, I'll show you one more symbol here. All this stuff is good because it says all the same thing. Because at the top of the pyramid, what do you have? You have the capstone, right? Sometimes the stuff is so simple, we miss it, right? Because it says capstone. Where do you wear your cap? On your head. And what's on the top of your head? Your brain. But what part of your brain is at the top part of your head? See, we need to understand the sciences. The sciences is the fundamentals of spirituality because spirituality is science. We think science is a white thing when we created science. And I'm going to show you some stuff in a little minute to show you how scientific our culture really is. But the point is, your cerebral cortex is at the crown of your head. The cerebral cortex is where your higher reasoning powers reside. Right? Because down in your lower brain is where all your autonomic stuff, to move your bodies and your muscles, all those kind of things that you do automatically. But your higher reasoning is in the cerebral cortex, which is the crown of your brain. So what is the crown really telling you? A crown on the top of the pharaohs was saying they had evolved themselves to now they had mastered their lower self and activated their higher self. It was functioning from their higher reasoning powers. They wore the true crown. The true king or queen is he or she who now functions from their higher thinking powers. The cerebral cortex. So when you wear a cap, you put it on the top of your head, so it represents or symbolical of the cerebral cortex or your higher thinking power. So the capstone of the pyramid is where the king's chamber is. It's telling you where kingliness or the pharaoh really represents. But then to go through and reach the king's chamber, you had to go through the queen's chamber. At the bottom of the pyramid, you had the grotto, which represents the generative organs, and the grotto goes to a bottomless pit. But then there was a pathway that moved up to the king's chamber. So one was traveling down, you went to the bottomless pit, which was hell. Traveling up, you went to the capstone and became crowned or became the hierophant of Pharaoh. It's telling you in the physical body that if you use your energy toward the lower nature, you go to the bottomless pit. If you channel your energy up toward this higher nature, you become the king, the pharaoh, the conqueror. That's right. Now, the other thing I was going to show you was this. The symbolism for the medical profession with the Caduceus. What it is it's the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system and the central nervous system, or the spinal column. And it's talking about how, and I was talking about how initiation or the mysteries accelerated the growth of the person to move them from a mortal to an immortal consciousness through getting them off the spiral path and putting them on the straight and narrow, to where they then raise their energy up to illuminate or unite their mind from left to right, or male and female, into a unity, and then their brain or consciousness flew into the heavens, and it became what? Cosmic consciousness. All of it's telling you that everything is telling you the same thing, once you can decipher what it's telling you. Now, how do you get there? Let's talk about how we get there. So, the lesser mysteries, so you had the lesser mysteries and you had the greater mysteries. The lesser mysteries was the techniques, the information, and the disciplines to condition your lower self. The greater mysteries was a solar path. It's an individual journey. No one can go into the greater mysteries. You have to go in there yourself. And the greater mysteries is where you go down into the depths of your own unconsciousness. Because within your own unconsciousness, all the universe is reflected. Because in your unconscious mind, the whole history of creation
led to divide all things into three as a mode of representing its own triune nature.
Side notes, when they talk about you have a recording angel on your shoulder, that's your aura, your etheric body. Your electromagnetic body registers everything you do. That's why somebody who's psychic can read you. Because they tune in to your energetic body, and by tuning into it, they pick up like a recorder, and it registers on their consciousness, and they can see. We all have that capacity too. But we're so busy at the lower level that we can't energize our higher level. So, the lesser mysteries is where you get the knowledge, the techniques. You have to have some body of knowledge or curriculum that they take you through. That really, number one, it conditions your heart. And that's the next piece here we'll talk about. Is the virtues. So we can pass these out. So again, you can read this and I kind of did a little synopsis of this, so you can read it and get more detail. And while they're passing out, if you want to get more information and knowledge on this, one, Dr. Lagan has classes. He might get mad at me when y'all come run, if y'all do come. A whole bunch of people not gonna come. Come to the class, but that's part of my work. I'm part of the common cross, so that's to condition the common herd. What is this man talking about? I'm talking about each of us astrologically or energetically are either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. If you don't know what I'm talking about, let's give you some more keys and start hunting, right? And a part of what I'm doing is just throwing little tidbits out there. And so if you are so moved, you will follow those tidbits and it will lead you somewhere. If you're not now, then later. So, those on the common cross, job is to condition the common herd or the common people. So that's a part of my work, is to get to the common people. The fixed cross.
What is that?
Get the book, The Labors of Hercules by Alice Bailey. You have that book?
Yeah.
Okay, see, a lot of us have the knowledge and information, but we don't study it.
I study.
We look through it or whatever, but we don't study in depth.
Well, I'm not too sure. Come here.
Yeah, I'm just giving, but see, a part of my job is to stimulate you to go do the work. See, because if you don't go through the work, it doesn't become valuable. You really won't understand it. So you got to do the work. The Labors of Hercules by Alice Bailey. Because you know the Labors of Hercules represents a soul. And the 12 labors are the 12 areas of life that each of us have to go through to have a complete, total experience. And then we could even get into that, because see, when we get into astronomy and astrology, you really start understanding what that's really all about. But anyway, let me get into talking about the virtues, because I only have so much time. And this is a 20-year course, so I can stay up here for weeks and just talk. But anyway, so before you could even, and some people say, well, the mysteries was a secret order, a secret society. It was a secret order and is a secret order and a secret society. But what's a secret? A secret is something you don't know. But you can gain the knowledge, but you had to do the work. Most people don't want to do the work. That's the key. Most people don't want to do the work. And so then if you don't want to do the work and go through the changes, you're not going to get it. And they don't apologize for it. Because if you do get the knowledge, your eyes will be opened and the veil of Isis will be pulled back and you will see God as it operates. Literally. I mean, literally.
You know, the old folks talk about that veil.
Yes. Yes. Okay, the virtues, the 10 virtues. Boy, now I gotta put my glasses on. Okay. Basically, what this came out of a combination that out of Stolen Legacy, and then out of the Aquarian Spiritual Center, Dr. Lagan tried to tie them to some of these key words to help you remember what they're talking about. I want to read this. It says, virtue is the order or discipline of the soul. And I focus on a lot of key words because it astounds me how so much information is put right before us, but then when you ask people questions, it's like they missed it. We're so busy trying to get so much that we miss how much is right there in something simple. And I say it says, virtue is the order or discipline of the soul. That's the whole thing right there. It's the order and discipline of the soul. So the soul is ordered around virtue. And virtue disciplines the soul. It says each commandment or discipline represented a principle of virtue, and the function of each virtue was to remove a fetter. A fetter is a chain, something that binds one to the lower plane.
That's right.
Hence, a life of virtue was antecedent or preparatory to those further experiences of initiations, which led to gradual perfection and the divinity of the neophyte. So then if you cannot deal with the virtues, you cannot go further into initiations. And you don't have to perfect all of them, but you have to be actively engaging in them. The other thing I would like to share with you, as you start to struggle on the physical level, which means what is your physical program? The physical body was made to move. It wasn't made to sit down in cars and drive all day, sit on the desks and look at computers all day. It wasn't designed for that. Which means that we live for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years being very active. And in the last, really since World War II, where we become urbanized, that means that a lot of our contemporary diseases are just a function of our lifestyle. And so then if the physical body is the vehicle for the actualization of spirit, if the physical body is deficient, there's no way we can reflect spirit. So then what's your physical program? Everybody, if they're truly saying they're going to be about liberation, have to have a physical program. No matter what it is, it's your own personal choice, but you got to do something. Walk, skate, jog, ride, swim, do hopscotch with your kids, play foursquare, whatever. But do something on a regular physical basis. The other thing is you need to study about your physical body, understand anatomy and physiology, understand biology, understand how these things function, because then you can make common things you do become beneficial to yourself. Because if you know how a certain muscle work and you're doing a job, if you then put your attention into it, you can make that be exercise. But you got to understand alignment and body posture and positions. So just getting up and down and walking down the street, you can put breathing exercises as you walk from point A to point B. You can be deep breathing and doing mantras and affirmation in your mind as you're moving from your office, walking across campus or from point A, and you get your time in. It's the quality of the time that counts. It's better to have 5 minutes of quality time than 2 or 3 hours of just scattered energy. And so these are keys. How do we apply this stuff every day? So physically, what do you do physically? How do you feed yourself? What are you putting into your body? Are you aware of the dynamics of diet and nutrition? Do you fast on a regular basis? Because the more bulk you put into your system, the more your energy has to focus on processing that bulk, and it weighs or lowers your vibratory rate. Higher spiritual levels are based upon more refined or higher frequencies of energy. So then when you want to go and to connect to higher spiritual levels, you need to make yourself lighter. That means you need to withdraw your attention from being focused on the physical, on the emotional, on the mental. That's where meditation comes in. Meditation is a universal discipline for contacting your intuitional body, which means through contacting your spiritual self. And you don't have to get in no lotus and do arms and all that. Although, when you get into a full lotus in certain positions, it's actually stimulating certain meridians in your body that adds to energy. And when you do certain mantras, they have certain frequencies that operate to open up certain levels of consciousness. So there is points and reasons for all those things. So the point I'm making is physically, you need to do something physically, emotionally in terms of the virtues. 1, steadfastness. A readiness or preparation for initiation. The ability to distinguish between the real and the unreal. What's the real? What's the real? What's the real? Your thoughts are real. Consciousness is real. What's real? God is real. The unseen is real. The invisible. The spiritual or the invisible is the real. Because this physical form is actually an expression of an invisible energy pattern. So the invisible is the real, the physical is the unreal. It's not that it's not real, but it's not the reality. The other reality is that life that we see as being born is not the real either. It's where we came from that's the real. So people who fear death got it reversed. Because in one sense, life or incarnation is death, and non-manifestation is life in one sense. But I don't want to, in one sense. But we're on a journey. So it's a purpose to this. Because eventually we will evolve out of these physical bodies. Go see, how many people seen the picture, what is that, powder? Those are keys. No, powder is about this young guy who was an energy. Oh, okay, right, the bomb. All right, okay, right. That was, it was, yeah, I was telling you, because at one point in time, once we evolved to a certain level of consciousness, we would no longer need these physical bodies. And we just go to the next level. But see, Heaven's Gate got it mixed up. See, they thought they were going to jump over this phase. And then when they get out there, they say, uh-oh, they're going to have to come back. They're going to have to come on back, and wherever they start off at, that's where you're going to start off at. Right. See, because everything is energy. So your life is a summation of moments. If you add up the quality of each moment, that will be the quality of your life. And whatever level of energy or vibratory rate you go out on, that's the vibratory rate you're going to come back on. And so you determine your future by how you operate today. That's what karma is all about. Cause and effect. So I tell my kids, y'all chose to be here. And my kids say, wow, why we got through all that? I say, well, if you don't want to be here, you don't like this, live perfectly, and you won't have to come back. But let me tell you something. If you do evolve to that level, you will choose to come back. Because the greatest work is to serve the whole. And if you look at all spiritually evolved individuals, their life is a life of service to the greater good. So it's a catch-22, huh? Can't escape. So, the virtues. 1, the real and the unreal. Secondly, to distinguish between that. So as you operate, are you steadfast in your ability to discriminate between what is the real and what is the unreal? 2, fidelity, creating a spiritual life for the soul unborn of greatest good. Is your life dedicated to creating a spiritual life? African culture and civilization, we spent what they say almost 75 to 80% of our time either engaged in or preparing for a spiritual ceremony, ritual. Our life was a spiritual ritual or ceremony. If you study ancient Kemet was designed to reflect heaven on earth. So everything we did was in reference to a spiritual reality orientation. Read Maldoma's book of Water and Spirit. He talks about that. So again, if we're saying we're African people and Pan-African people, are we devoted or true to creating a spiritual life? Devotion, dedicated to a purpose or goal giving meaning to one's life. Each of us were called here to have a part of the solution to the problem. Your heart knows what your role is. So I say, as you go through your life, you respond to certain things. Certain things touch you. Certain things you're kind of excited about or passionate about. That's what you're supposed to do. But because this external society conditions you that you gotta have a pension plan, you got to have a insurance policy, you got to have this, you got to have that, otherwise you're not legitimate. We then become guided by the external as opposed to internal. But if you start to follow your unction, your calling, and we'll get to that, the obedience to the call, then Spirit will provide you with everything you need. And it's not about being poor, because you'll have whatever you need to provide you with what you got to do. No more, no less. So if you need to have a well-running car so you can move from point A to point B and don't be breaking down and can't get to where you got to go. You need to be able to travel from here to there so you can do the work that you have to do. So prosperity is a part of the condition. But the conscience is the point. So the point is, what is your purpose or what is your goal? Do you know what it is? A lot of time I work a lot of time with young people, so-called kids at hardcore kids. If you get them off by themselves and you talk to them one-on-one, all of them have certain aspirations or desires they would really like to do. But because we don't understand the way to achieve those things, then in the external culture, we have to get into what is familiar. The point is, each of us, especially when you were younger, had dreams about things we would like to do. But then society usually then beat us down to where we think we can't do it. One is we lost the courage to do it, we lost the self-confidence to do it, and these other things. And we'll go through that. The point I'm trying to say is, what's your purpose? What's your goal? Each of you should have a purpose or a goal. You do have a purpose or a goal. Do you know what it is? A lot of us know what it is, but we're scared to deal with it because it may mean changing. It may mean disrupting the familiar way we've done. It may mean other people may not want us to go that way, because if you change, you then challenge people to change. And people then going to try to keep you the way you are, because then it doesn't legitimize them changing too. Because if you change, it means that I can change. And if I'm afraid to change, I'm going to try to stop you from changing, because that justifies me staying the way I am. So if you understand these things, it can help you overcome the doubts and things that people project onto you, but you also do them to yourself. Because your ego, which is your conditioned self, likes to maintain its comfort zone. And so if you've been conditioned to be comfortable a certain way, it can be even negative. For you to move out of that, it becomes frightening to your ego. So it's going to try to talk you out of doing it. Because your ego is not you. That's right. Your ego is not you. It's a created vehicle of conscious mind. But that's not your true self. And so I'm just trying to give you keys that can help you navigate through this abyss. Next thing here is fortitude. Freedom from resentment on the experience of persecution and wrong. Victory over self. I think we talk about it on the radio. Every session I have, people talking about, let's turn the other cheek. That's like, let's let somebody beat you down and don't do anything about it. No. That's not what it's saying. That's not what it's saying. The ultimate thing is harmony and balance, right? So if somebody's trying to beat you down, they're trying to take you out. They're trying to create imbalance. So you have to do what you have to do to maintain harmony or balance. So it's like in martial arts, we talk about the Tao, right? So then somebody comes at me with a destructive force, my goal is to neutralize that force and do what I have to do to neutralize it. Now, if somebody's going to come in and just blow me away and take all my family out or whatever, then I have to do what's necessary to maintain that harmony. So that means you believe in self-defense. But the thing is, you shouldn't do it out of anger. You shouldn't do it out of anger. You should maintain your calmness, your poise. So that way your reference point is still from a higher perspective. Because sometimes people are reacting because they're conditioned. So then you respond to just their action as opposed to looking at behind their action. If you can look at behind their action, then you won't react the same way to them. I know a lot of us had a lot of abusive situations when we were younger. And we have a lot of angers and hatreds toward, it can be members of our family or our environment. But then I went through that. But what I had to do is go back and see, well, they weren't born like that. What happened to that in their life that made them become who they were? Once I could go beyond that, because I had experience with my father. Once I went and looked at how he grew up and the frustration that he had, then he was just projecting those things onto me. Then once I understood that, I could then see that what he was doing to me was a conditioned response. And then what that did is it reinforces my commitment to change the system that creates that state of mind, as opposed to focus on the individuals. So then anytime these negative things happen to us, what we have to do is go beyond the specific and go to the general conditions that create those conditions, and hopefully it recommits us to change the system or the conditions so these things can stop happening. Because you can't fight individuals one by one. You got to go back to the source of the thing. And so the issue is freedom from resentment on the experience of persecution. Because if you're responding to those negative experiences, it keeps you at that level of consciousness. And on a spiritual level, like begets like. There's another energy to this too that can accelerate your spiritual growth and development. Because if you receive a negative force, your natural tendency will then to come back with the same negative force. But then if you can take that negative force and recycle it and come back at a higher level, you actually use the negative force to accelerate your own spiritual development. Which is basically what African people have been doing during the experience of slavery. But see, we got the other side of us in terms of, because our conscious mind, the amnesia of our conscious mind and who we are, we still operate within this limited experience. That's why they always keep us thinking in terms of the African American experience. They never go back to the African experience where we operate as independent people. We're independent nations. They never show those images. Even this thing with Steven Spielberg is going to do on, what's the name of that the Amnesty? It's still a story relative to the slave experience. And even though we are heroic in it, it's still relative to the slave experience. So in a greater context, that era was still dominated by Europeans. So we have to go through the experience beyond that and start generating images and stories of how we existed independent of the European. Otherwise, they still have us reacting or even getting mad, and they keep us enslaved. So freedom from resentment on the experience of persecution. So we have temperance, control of one's action of the passional nature, the passions, right? Food, drink, sex, party, nice clothes, nice things, power, attention. Again, what is it relative to? Right. Let me show you. This is a critical piece here. This is probably, under this whole scenario of action, anything you do is based upon two, right? If you want to walk, you got the idea, then you got to move toward actualizing the idea. Or if you're in a relationship, it's you and the other person, right? Or you and your job, you and your car, you and your clothes, you and your food, you and your kid, you and TV, you and whatever. Now the critical element is, what is the third factor? The reference point. I say related to what? That's the critical question. Related to what? So then if we're saying we're about African liberation, everything that we do should be relative to liberation. That becomes your reference point. So if we get together as organizations, if we get together as individuals, and we're having conflicts, are those conflicts going to fulfill the third factor? If that action is not going to fulfill the third factor, then we have to resolve that. If we say we're about that. If we can't resolve that, then our reference point is probably somewhere down here. Individualism, ego. And so as we talk about things or evaluate things, reference point. And when I get through, I will show how the 7 liberal arts and sciences transform your reference point. Because you understand the nature of the universe is based upon number, it's based upon geometry, it's based upon harmonic, electromagnetic patterns, it's based upon astronomical cycles. And then once you understand that, it creates the patterns that then we should fulfill by being obedient. Because when you're by being obedient to God, and God is a hierarchy of forces, then one then reaps the benefits of that. And so if God is a hierarchy of forces, what is the present pattern of the forces at this time and space? What's that pattern? And a pattern then has a certain quality. So what is the quality calling for at this time? Anyway, temperance. Temperance then means that you can't have a little this or have a little that, but it's like keeping things in balance. Relative to, if something becomes an obstacle, then you can't do it. There's certain things that I could do personally that another person could not do. But if my actions then create an obstacle for the greater good, then I can't do it. Because of the reference point. Courage. Confident in the power of the teacher. Courage as would not allow adversity to turn one away from their goal. I've been working in the struggle, liberation movement since 1968. Okay? And there have been many times, and I know many people that started out with me who are not actively struggling. I can't stand them niggas shit. People are crazy, I'm frustrated. But I say, well then, we always say, if you have become disillusioned, you are operating from an illusion in the first place. Right? Okay. So if you really understand what's going on, you can then understand why people are behaving the way they're behaving. That's a part of what the work is, to deal with that. Then, so, do you have the courage to not allow adversity to deter you from your goal? We start off with united fronts and all these different meetings and different groups, and then when we get controversy or somebody don't show up or this or that, we get discouraged and we stop. Only to next year or 6 months later start again. 2 years later start again, but we never develop it because we don't have the courage to be consistent. Consistency is manifestation. I gotta kind of wind this up. Obedience, being obedient to the call. Vocation. One who has vocation hears the voice of the inner self. They are called. Everybody is called. I would guarantee each and every one of you has been called, has heard the call, but has each and every one of you been obedient to the call? Because it says confidence in one's ability to learn and master the truth. That means if you hear the call and follow it, although it may be like an abyss in front of you, and there's a book called, I'm blanking out on this book. It's The Aquarian Conspiracy by Marilyn Ferguson. And I can't get, because my time is running out, I want to cover a few more things. But in that book, Aquarian Conspiracy, she talks about how globally this phenomenon is happening, where people, housewives or scientists who were physicists are now going into art, or a housewife is taking up a great cause and doing something and making various changes in the world. And they say what happened to them, they felt this force that was pulling on them. And out in front of them, it was a feeling like they was finna step off an abyss into darkness. But something inside them gave them the courage to take the step. And when they stepped out, something came and with their foot stepped right on it. And so what I'm saying is, if you are obedient to the call, and these are the virilities or the force of your soul, if you're obedient to the call, even though you do not see clearly the outcome of it, if you truly follow it, the resources that you need will be there for you. It's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. That's right. So then you have to have confidence in your ability to learn and master the truth. And they totally psyched us out in terms of our ability to learn and master the truth. On prudence. Evidence of having a mission and insight that befits the faculty of seership, intelligence, or understanding. This basically deals with you going inwardly and cultivating your intelligence, your intelling. So you need to practice some form of regular quieting of your mind. Eventually your whole continence will be where you are here, but simultaneously are always conscious of the greater reality. That's the ultimate that you want to get to. So as I interact with you, I'm still interacting with you in the context of this greater reality. So if you see people that are really very spiritual, many times they're in this real meditative state because they don't lose contact with the greater reality. And wisdom, control of one's thoughts. Thoughts are things. Energy follows thought, and thought directs energy. And you're energy. Your body is pulsating with energy. So whatever ideas and thoughts you hold in your mind directs the energy flow in your body. That's why if you constantly say, I'm sick of this, I'm tired of this, or they make me sick to my stomach, you actually create the foundation of your own dis-ease. Because your body says, oh, you're sick. Okay, well, we're going to be sick. Also, diseases are a function of your mind. So if you change your thinking, you can change your health. You study a lot of stuff that's happened with the mind body, and people had all these diagnosed diseases that the medical profession they can't do anything with, and they went back and started dealing with developing their minds with certain attitudes, and they healed themselves. Justice, unswerving righteousness of thought and action, ability to distinguish between right and wrong. Basically, we really know what's right and wrong. We really do. Kids know what's right and wrong. But then they become conditioned to play the game. And so if I get away with something, then okay, cool. So justice, the other thing here, that justice is universal. That means the universe is based upon pure right. And so whatever you project into the universe, it's going to feed back to you. And so if you're not right, you can't fool life. And you're going to reap what you sow. If you understand the principle, you then will operate from the principle. A lot of us have the knowledge in our minds, the ideas, but we don't follow it. Because we rationalize in our mind like we're going to trick something. You're tricking yourself. Because the universe is pure. It's pure. It don't, all these little games you make up in your mind like, oh, that wasn't that bad. Or, you know, they didn't see me, so it's okay. Energetically, it happens. It's real. And you are the quality of everything you think, you do, and you feel. And so in summary, you got the 10 virtues. And in summary, okay. I want to briefly go over the 7 liberal arts and sciences. The 7 liberal arts and sciences, and it's something that is so incredible. On Thursday nights, we have a class on origin, evolution, religion. We're going chapter by chapter through Church Wars piece, talking about the African origins of religion, and really the origins of consciousness. Because religion deals with binding one back to beginnings. And binding one back to the beginning binds us back to when we first evolved consciousness. I won't go into that. On Thursday night, 7:30 at the African Study Group, You can get on that journey. But the 7 liberal arts and sciences, really number, geometry, harmonics, which we see as music, astronomy. Then you get into rhetoric, you get into grammar, and you get into logic, which is also dialectics or reasoning. You have the 4 and the 3. The 4 are universal. They actually are the principles upon which creation functions. The 3 deals with consciousness, because our perception of this is a function of our consciousness. We're only having this discussion because we have a conscious mind. So this discussion is relative to that journey, right? Everything that we're doing is in the context of this. And it even talks about how our bodies are being formed to fulfill this destination. Because we're being structured or formed so that we can register data and evolve our consciousness so that we can become more and more conscious. We only use but 4% of our brain power, right? So we ain't nowhere done yet. Anyway, number. Study Memphite theology. I'm not going to go too far into this. Anyway, number. Look at, first you had 0, right? Which represents the void, the all. It's all, and so if you have all, you also have nothing. But if you have nothing, you also have everything. So then that's potentiality, right? Everything is possible, okay? Which also means when you're able to clean your own slate, your own mind, everything becomes possible. The only thing that limits you is you start carrying over limitations in your mind. So every night, one should clean the slate. So when you wake up the next day, you have a totally new beginning. Again, trying to show you how these things are cosmic, but they're also personal because we're a little universe. So then you have, now follow this. At first, you have non-being, but inherent in non-being or non-manifestation is its opposite, manifestation or being. So then, from non-being, you then get the idea of being. That idea becomes a vibration, because for it to be, for its possibility, it becomes an energy, right? It becomes a thought or an idea or a vibration. That vibration then initiates beingness. And so when you initiate beingness, the initiator of beingness, or the one, actually inherent in the one is a duality. Right? Which then breaks off and becomes 2. Well, inherent in 2 opposites, you have to have a reconciliation or a midpoint. Right? Opposite, if you have being, non-being, and being, you have to also have what? What's in between? Becoming. Right? Non-being, being, and in the middle, becoming. Right. So, follow what I'm saying. If you have non-being and ultimate being, what is this? That's who we are. We are becoming godlike.
There you go.
Right. So then you get the 3. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3. Then out of the 3, you then have your generator 4. Because 4 deals with, right, physical world. So you have light, you have particles, right, subatomic particles, protons, neutrons, right? Then you have atoms, then you have molecules. Molecules is what all material is made of. Everything in here, this piano, this paper, me, this microphone, is all made of molecules combined together, different atoms that form different molecules that create different substances. Right? That's the 4. Then from the 4 you get, this is material, then you get vegetable, you get animal, and then you get human, which is really consciousness. Because humans are animals with consciousness. Right? So then you get 7 levels of being, and then, what do I want to say? Only 7 levels of being. 7 levels of being is a function of 4 and 3. Okay? Which gives you 7. That goes back to the 7-fold levels of humans. Then you get into what? Number. Why? You got what? 7 colors, 7 on basic vibration on the numerical scale. You have the function of, well, I can show you how in astronomy, what is it? You have the basic moon cycle. You have, I'm going to go real quick now. Okay, astronomically, you have what? We talked about not Memphite theology, but you have in the original forms of religion, you had first the Great Mother, which is the womb out of which all life flows. Right? The great abyss, the water. We all come out of the water, out of the great womb, out of that black hole which life comes out of. If you go to the source of the Nile comes out of an underground cavern where the river first comes out of. If we look into the heavens, the waters come out of the heavens, out of this black hole around the pole stars, etc. So then you have the duality. You have the 2 suns, right? And the 2 suns in nature are light and dark, right? Day and night, conscious, unconscious. Right? Then you have light and dark, birth, death, etc. There's 2 realities. Now within that, you have a 3rd factor. You have birth, you have growth, you have maturity, and you have death. Or you have birth, maturity, death, and ancestorship. Right? The 4 functions. You have spring, summer, fall, and winter. You have sunrise, high noon, sunset, midnight. You have new moon, quarter moon, full moon, last quarter, new moon. So then, within the 4 basic cycles, you also then break those things in half, and you get 8. You get 8 functions. Now, in between the 8, you also then have, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 4 times 3 equals, 3 times 4 equals 12. I'm going to wrap this up. And what I'm saying is, the 3, I'm trying to get too much in too little time. So the 3, basically you have the Trinity, right? Of, you can say father, mother, and offspring. Oh, this is what I want to show you. With the circle, you have separation between day and night, right? This becomes what? The diameter to a circle. What is the formula and the key ratio that gives you the relationship between the diameter to a circle? It's pi, right? The function of pi, which is 3.1416 or 15, right? Then if you divide this into halves, you then create a 9-degree triangle. Then if you deal with the hypotenuse of this 3, 4, 5 triangle, the hypotenuse will give you phi. Phi is a ratio that equals 1.618. This ratio here, because if you divide this triangle into halves, you get another right triangle. If you divide this triangle in half, you get another right triangle. If you divide this triangle in half, you get another right triangle. If you divide this triangle in half, you get another one. If you divide this, you get another one. This, you get another one. This, you get another one. This ratio of phi and pi are the basic proportions and ratios upon which all created things follow this pattern. Our bodies evolve at the same ratio. We grow at the same ratio. Plant life, leaves, animals, the cycle of the planets. All these various cycles and functions are a combination of these prime ratios that are based upon these 4 positions. So we're talking about astronomy, we're talking about number, we're talking about geometry, and we're talking about the relationship between geometry and number, between forms and shape is vibration, which is harmony or music. So then we would have to get into more details talking about this, because then it justifies time and energy. That means all of us that are born at this point in time are vibrating at the same frequency of this time. And I can also tell us then we were called here because we're an extension of the earth. The earth is a living organism, a part of a living universe. And so then it is calling what it needs to heal itself. So then all of us are here in response to a greater call. Are we being obedient to the call? Some of you are, because you're sitting here right now. We are not sitting here by happenstance or by chance. All of us that are being attracted to this information, to these various groups, is a higher plan going on. The issue is, do you understand what's happening? Because if you become conscious of what's going on, then you can help make it manifest. It's like if you're out swimming with the tide or against the tide. If you swim with the tide, you have a great time. If you try to swim against the tide, you work yourself to death. So when they say it's the best of time or the worst of times, it's based upon your consciousness. We're at the threshold of moving into a new world order. The white folks know, or the really ain't white folks, it's the powers that be. Because those powers that be are beyond race. They are relating to a philosophy, a worldview. It's the worldview that we have to deal with. If we get caught up in the color thing, we will miss the true power. Because right now, African people are bumping to our beat.
That's right. Yeah.
People, the world, commercial, understand the power of harmonics. Because harmonics is music. Music and harmony gives you a vibration. Vibration is volume. Volume is space. Space is real. So we're saying music takes up space. Volume or frequency gives form. There are only so many forms that make up all created things. That means that all creation is based upon certain vibrations. So if you put vibration in certain combinations, you can affect the physical form. But because we're not into the science of self, we then are used as tools to manipulate marketing, to then feed the coffers of the capitalists who are just sucking up all the resources. And see, they'll create a space station in space, think that they'll go and live in space. I was talking to somebody say, they'll go live in space for a few thousand years, let the earth replenish itself and try to come back. I mean, it ain't going to happen, but in their diabolicalness, they will destroy things thinking that they'll do that. But we so crazy that we're going to ride along with the program. And if we ride along with the program, we support the program and we reap the same benefits. So I guess in summary, because again, this is a 20-year study and all that. So in summary, what I'm saying is this is only, a teaspoon. It ain't even a teaspoon of yourself. Of yourself. Understand what I'm saying? Of yourself. If you just go into yourself, you can actualize this, but you got to have confidence. You got to have courage. You got to have fortitude. And rhetoric really evolved out of this. Because the words are an expression of experience. And the first thing we experienced was nature, the natural order of things. So the origins of language came out of the expression of the natural order of things, which was natural science, observation of natural phenomena. So you got to go back into the language. Then you got grammar. Grammar is basically the structured process which is basically dealt with the alphabet. We're really going to meta-netter. Before the meta-netter, you got into signs and symbols, evolved into meta-netter, evolved into alphabets. But that's based upon the living experience, which is based upon number, geometry, harmonics, and astronomy. Then you got logic. Once your conscious mind becomes knowledgeable of how nature operates, when you look at that plant, Can you see the geometry of the plant? Can you see the number of the plant? Do you understand the history of the plant? That plant could talk to you. Because then as you understand the plant, you can then get in sync with the plant and gain more information out the plant. Then your frame of reference changes. Your logic changes. Your reference point changes. Once your reference point changes, your behavior will change. And you will start to create relative to your reference point. So it goes back to the final conclusion at this point in time. Where was it at? Right here. What is the reference point? If we say we are trying to be Pan-Africanists, the nature of African people is spiritual and it's based upon scientific knowledge that operates from a virtuous foundation. That's the foundation. So if we're saying we'll be a bit about being Pan-Africanists, then it is our responsibility to resurrect the ancient mystery teachings, because that was the foundation of our culture and civilization. Every administrator, every captain of sail, the 7 seas, the merchants, all the religious order, the councilmen, all these individuals were initiates that went through this information and knowledge. So just think how Congress would operate if every congressman was a graduate of this knowledge. And you just didn't get no diploma because you just went through the studies. You had to be tested in character and in knowledge. And if you was found wanting, you didn't get out. They didn't let you loose. And later on, stuff started happening. So anyway, in conclusion, and I want to thank you for your time and presence, but struggle with the knowledge. Run to the knowledge, not from the knowledge. And be obedient to the call. I'm just trying to be obedient. Oh yeah, there's right here. Oh yeah, I do have my first attempts at publishing. This book is called Rites and Rituals of Initiation, and basically what I did is outline the 8 generic phases of any initiation process, or process of transformation. It's based upon our indigenous rites of passage, and then how this became the prototype for all other subsequent mystery schools, martial arts systems, meditation systems. I even show how the gangs follow this structure because this is a natural order universe. And then also talk about how African American people are on an initiatory process. And right now we are in the phase, we went through trials and tribulations, we're still going through trials and tribulations, but what is to come is the revelation in terms of what is the meaning of what we're going through. Then once we then get that revelation of that meaning, then the true resurrection will come, and that's the phase we're going through now. So this book kind of outlines a lot of that, and also talks about when we go through personal initiation and personal transformation, we go through the same thing. So maybe we can come back and talk about this another time.
Indeed.
Yes. Yeah, these are $7, and support black business, because as you support black business, it enables us to grow more too. Yeah, right.
All righty.
Questions? Okay.
Before we go into questions, we need you to have the opportunity to share your love offerings and your blessings.
That's right.
All righty? Because part of the law of what Brother Dadisi is talking about here is the law of reciprocity. As you give, you receive. It's a true law, folks. What he's talking about here, this process of giving. If you are stingy in your giving, you can just eliminate from your mind the idea that these teachings, even what you've heard tonight, are going to be anything but stingily received by you.
That's right.
So it doesn't matter the amount so much. What matters is the attitude, the love, the givingness that you give your gift with. please give it with love, with the idea that you are giving into the universal good. You are giving but to yourself. So take your love offering in your hand and affirm with me, divine love through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. I give freely, and I receive abundantly. We're asking for a love offering of a minimum of $5, but this is an African gathering, so some of you have more than $5 to give. That means that you give it. Because some of us don't believe we've got $5 to give, even though we can go any place else in the world and spend all kinds of money.
Yes, sir.
Wonderful, my brother. Such a blessing to us. When can we have you back? Real soon.
Let's schedule it.
How about let's schedule the 8th of June?
No, I'll be
Too
out of
soon?
time.
Okay.
Yeah, probably toward the end of June.
Okay,
Right.
well, we'll probably have to do it sometime around in July.
Okay.
We'll maybe open up with July.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take a look at the schedule. I'm going to try to look right now so I can make an announcement.
Okay. All right. Is that it? That's it?
Except for applauding you again after the offering, and then we'll take 3 questions.
Okay.
But make sure this brother gets one of these books.
I got about 5.
Man, can I get one from you?
Sure. Any change?
How many books do you have?
I think I got 5 with me. I can bring some more back up here though.
Let me go look at this.
Okay, yeah. 5 with that. Let's see. 7, 20, 13, right. 10, okay. 11, 12, 13. Here you go.
You got any more?
Yeah, she's gonna get that for me right there.
You might just mention that you have limited copies. We'll get some more here.
Right.
And they can get them here.
Okay.
We only have a few. Brother Nisha, will you bring me a book Thursday?
I have some Thursday. Yeah, there's some at the center. There's some at the center. There'll be some at the center. Right. They're gonna ask some questions in a minute. Yeah, 7. She's got them over there. Give me your name and I can get you one because it's only a limited number. Do you come here regular?
Oh, okay. Just to make sure that I secure a book for this brother. You
Okay.
so
Black man. Okay. Okay. All right. Tell him, brother. All right. How's it going? Pretty good. Long time.
Yeah.
How you been?
Pretty good. I was going to ask about the drumming classes on Saturdays.
They're over at MacArthur Park.
Okay.
Right. 11:30. 12 o'clock.
Is it ongoing?
It's ongoing. Right.
I just wanted to ask about
Okay.
Okay.
How you doing? All right.
we're going to have the opportunity of
right there.
answering 3 questions. 3 questions before we close.
We've been talking about creating dogs now.
Oh, okay.
And we're looking right now to schedule Brother Sanyika to return sometime in July.
Talking Max.
The woman right here.
Right.
So we need you to, I can't quite figure out what the schedule is yet, but be listening to the radio station and in the Knowledge Broker and around for when the schedule is going to be for Brother Dadisi to be back with us in July, probably the 1st or 2nd Sunday in July. So we'll be looking forward to that then. Okay. 6/13, probably 13. The 13th of July. The 13th of July, we're scheduling Brother Dadisi to be back with us. We also want to note that we have Sister Jaquetta Parhams, who will be here on the 27th of July, and a Ron Roth. Ron Roth is a former Catholic priest who discovered within himself the gift of healing and of laying on hands. and of speaking the words, a very powerful individual. And he will be here on Saturday, the 26th of July, from 3 until 6 o'clock p.m. That's Ron Roth. Yes. And if you're not on our mailing list, please be sure and sign the visitor's book by the door, or write your name on something and leave it with us so that we can let you know when things are happening. We also want to invite you Well, Erica fixed. Okay, we're in order. We also, excuse me, Daddy.
No problem.
Could I have your attention, please? My wife is trying to help me. How beautiful it is to have a partner like that. Indeed. Let me call your attention to these flyers that tell you about unity here, about what we do, the classes that are available to you, because what Brother Dadisi is sharing with you is what we do here all the time, as well as what he does out at the Long Beach African Study Center in Long Beach. So we're not just here on Sunday evenings, we're here all the time. So take these particular ideas with you so that you can be back if you're serious about what we're talking about here tonight. So these will be available for you on the piano. Also, that's enough. You'll see what's happening here. You'll get the newsletter. Questions, 3 questions. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was getting ready to write down my question again. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Brother Dadisi, for your fine lecture. I really appreciate it. And you're right. We're in sync because Dr. Pookum was lecturing on a lot of the keys that you were saying. And, of course, you know Dr. Lagandu. So my question is about that 28th cycle, but it's something you zoomed in on. And I wanted to ask you about the moon phase of that woman menstrual cycle when she give birth to that child. And I'll use examples, say for instance, the first quarter. And in this question, say the child, okay, the mother menstrual cycle is on the first quarter, the child is born, and then that child birthday is related to that. Could you give us some type of summary on that also?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What I know, yeah. I guess I can use this, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. What I've been shared, there's a book called Psychic Phenomena Behind the Iron Curtain that outlines a study that was done by a Czechoslovakian doctor in terms of identifying the relationship to birth and fertility of a woman and moon cycles. Number one, they said a woman has 2 fertility cycles. She has a regular menstrual cycle with every 28 days, but she also, her most fertile time of the month is when the sun and the moon each month return to the exact same angle or degree as the sun and the moon was at her birth. And so then there's a whole system of astrological birth control that's based upon that cycle, but it's also where you can also define the gender of the child. Because every month you have a change in polarity from a positive to a negative polarity. And there's indication that the actual acidity balance in the woman's uterus is changed with the polarity of that month. And so if you understand the relationship between a sperm and an egg, a certain sperm is going to match up with a certain egg, and it's based upon the polarity between this electromagnetic relationship between the two. So when the polarity of the uterus changes, then it attracts, or a different sperm will then be able to impregnate that egg because of the polarity of the sperm. And so then they say if then during that time of the month that a woman is most fertile, if it is in a male sign or masculine sign, then it will produce a male child. If it's in a feminine sign, then it can produce a female child. He's done, and he probably did this with about 95, 96% accuracy. So only thing that I can related to what you're saying is that there's a direct relationship between the position of the sun and the moon when a woman is born and her fertility cycles. And also there's some other things you can get in terms of even dealing with the time of conception between the two parents and the astronomical pattern at that time, because it equates to a frequency or energy, which also all frequencies have a certain pattern and the characteristics that then is imprinted in all things that exist or are born at that time. So in terms of my understanding, that is all that I could probably comment on that. That book is by two American women. Oh man. And then there's a whole, if you go to the Aquarian, one of the issues of Uraeus has a article that outlines that, and I guess what I can do is, what I'll do is in the next issue of the Knowledge Broker, unanswered questions, I will put them in the Knowledge Broker. So let me write them down. I will put that also in the next issue of the Knowledge Broker. Or if you come to class on Thursday nights, I can also bring that also. For class, it's 1901 Atlantic. It's around the corner of Atlantic, probably 19 Atlantic. It's right down from PCH and Atlantic. And it's on Thursday nights, 7 o'clock.
Congratulations on an excellent lecture, and thank you so much for telling the truth. In your booklet on the initiation with unity, you speak of the shadow. Can you elaborate a little more on that?
I love this brother here. Okay. Quickly. If you look at the psyche as a circle, you look at the conscious mind as about 1/4 of the total psyche. And the unconscious mind is about 3/4 of the psyche. Then there's another layer called the personal unconscious. This layer is where, when you're, say, like if you're a child, for example, and you're up in your crib and you're bouncing up and down because you just like to bounce up and down, and your mother come in and say, "Don't bounce up and down." Or you might be in your crib and you get a pencil or something, you start writing on the wall. Don't write on that wall. Those negative things that people say are bad in your environment, you push down into the collective unconscious or the personal unconscious. Your conscious mind is a condition. Right on your conscious mind is your ego. Your ego is trained to do what conditioned response. For you to, if things that are done to you that are negative, you don't do it anymore. Things that you do that you get a positive response to, that's what you do. Even negative behaviors that get a positive response, say if you're, like they say in kids' class, the kid that does the work, people just say, "Oh, he's nice," they don't say nothing. The kid that acts out gets attention. You reinforce the kid that's acting out because people need attention. So what I'm saying is even bad behavior can be positive behavior to feed a person. So anyway, the point I'm saying is all that the environment or society says is negative or taboo or not good is pushed down into the personal unconscious, which becomes a shadow. All the negative things, but it's unconscious. You're not aware of it. So inside your unconscious mind is yourself. So then as your self initiates information to try to get to your conscious mind, it has to go through your personal unconscious or the shadow. So then say you have a creative idea, but you've been conditioned to think that you can't think creative or that you're stupid or clumsy or whatever. As that impulse comes through your personal unconscious or the shadow, it's going to get perverted. And then your conscious mind is going to read it in a negative way, and you won't respond to it in a certain type of way. This is called where the place of psychic debris or hell. Because see, for you to consciously go down and to contact yourself, your true self, you have to go through all this negativity or the psychic debris or what is hell. If your conscious mind don't know what's happening and you try to go down and connect with your more creative self, you start expressing all kind of anxieties and various kinds of things that then pervert your capacity to be your true creative self. So much negativity gets buried down in here, people can't even respond to their true self. So the shadow are all those unconscious things that have been buried in your unconscious mind. That's why a part of the process of dealing with meditation and symbolism, you have to bring all that stuff up and look at it. And then what takes the shadow away? Light. So then by bringing light or consciousness or knowledge to these things, you can clear it up. That's why the example I gave in terms of some personal shadow I had between older men behind my father. It was only when I started bringing light and knowledge to that behavior was I able to understand it and resolve that psychic thing inside of me. And so then that's what the shadow is. But the thing about it is, if you're not conscious of the shadow, energy cannot be created or destroyed, only changed in form. So energy that is pushed down into your unconscious mind will still express itself, but usually in unconscious or negative behaviors. That's why the virtues help to clear this stuff up. Because as you start to become empowered, that knowledge, if you haven't cleaned it up, well then whatever little complex that you have down in here will start to get energized, and then it will become obsessive. That's why people get a lot of behavior. They don't know what's happening to them. They can't control it because they haven't resolved these unconscious factors in their life.
Brother Dadisi, thank you. 2 points. In my spiritual eye, of the virtues that come across most strongly about you, to me, is courage. And with regards to courage and the experiences you went through with your father, can you speak to your experience with Dr. Lagan and dealing with that individual for 20 years, in him being 91 years old, seeing him at this phase in his life and the manifestations of these teachings in his life, what they mean to him? Second part, and deal with as much as you care to or can. I had listened to Dr. Richard King some months ago speaking about the transition between the various Kairos times, or doorways between the star times, so to speak. As we enter the Age of Aquarius, we can anticipate the rise of the Isis principle or the goddess principle or the Madonna principle, and that's something that has happened in a pattern traditionally, that as we make these transitions between these Kairos times, there is a rise in the Madonna principle. Can you speak with those, please?
Okay. I'm going to speak to the last question first and the first question last. And I'll put it in this sense. In the psyche, because remember, everything in creation is dual. So in a male, his conscious mind is masculine, but his unconscious mind is feminine. And for a female, her conscious mind is female, her unconscious mind is masculine, in terms of the imagery or the characteristics of it, because it's duality. The whole purpose of initiation is to bring about the mystic marriage or the wholeness, the unity between the two, between the conscious and unconscious. But because the conscious society has been dominated by the male image, the male psyche is projected into this culture, then for us to reach synthesis, remember we're going from here to here. Remember that first society was based upon the female was the dominant characteristics. Then eventually we moved until the male became the dominant, which is this opposite. So anytime you have one extreme, it brings out its other side. So now as we move to synthesis, what is happening is the female has to become more pronounced so there can be a balance. But the only negative that can be of that is that in the reaction of the feminine in her opposite being buried, when you start to release it, it can shoot to the other extreme before it reaches a balance point. And so that's why you see now, and I'll raise this question, I have 3 daughters. And what I try to tell them is, be powerful in your femininity. A lot of women, in trying to exert power, want to do it as a masculine thing. Wearing men's suits and trying to be men's things. That ain't what it's about. It's about them exerting that Mars energy, but through the feminine power to bring about the balance. And so anyway, so all he's saying is as we come through this next transition, there's going to be the rise of the opposite. So the feminine, the Isis principle, the feminine has to come to the foreground to create a true balance. And so we're going to see it more and more. We were talking about the other day about a lot of the new rising black women's businesses are some of the most prolific and rising, the female energy. Because the men, we are so engrossed in the Western civilization, we are not comfortable with dealing with the feminine sides of ourselves. Because we've been so conditioned to the way the European look at the feminine. And so then until we become comfortable with the feminine, that's why we project that. And that's why we abuse the female, because we're not comfortable with the female inside of ourselves. And so then the issue is, one thing, if you get into African culture, the nature of African culture is understanding the relationship between the male and the female. That's why African dance is so good. Because you physically start to release and act out those things that help one to go back beyond the European energy, but also psychologically allows you to start to express those things that help you to keep balance. The other question, in terms of dealing with my father and Lagan and those kind of things, because a lot of times the males in our society are going through a certain frustration in their lives. Because my father used to work for a post office out in Beverly Hills. He was a porter on the train. And a lot of things happened to his life where he tried to move out and become more successful, but the system constantly put barriers. And because he was very proud, he didn't want to subject himself to being put in situations to where people say, oh, no, you can't do this, and we don't have these jobs. But, his people say, well, yeah, we got that job. He said, oh, no, we got a janitor job. We ain't got the electrician job or whatever. And because we're not organized, he never organized. So anyway, rather than to keep confronting that, he turned to alcohol or other things, worked 2 or 3 jobs so he could still pay for his family, but inside he was frustrated. So in that frustration, he would take the frustration out in the family situation. Because many times they say you put it on the people you love. And so anyway, the point is, in not having that kind of an open dialogue with the male image in my life, then as I got older and interacted with older males, I had a barrier in being able to really be real close with these older males. And so then that created kind of a distance, type of relationship. In dealing with Lagan, the number one thing we learned in Gnostic Studies is respect personality. Each of us got a different personality. So you can't get hung up in the personality. Lagan has a personality. And you have to be able to separate the personality of the vehicle from the teachings. If you don't, you miss out on so much knowledge. And so that is the most critical. And so when I get in an organization and I'm working with people, you got all these crazy, because everybody got a story. And most of us has been in some kind of abusive relationship. If it's physical, psycho, the system is abusive. So we ain't in tune. So of course we're going to express some form of insanity or some, neurosis or something. And so if you understand that, you can be all right with that. And so in that way, and I can tell you some other stuff in terms of, I'm an astrologer, so I can understand that he's a Taurus Aries. I am. So it becomes, that's how he is. But that's been his strength too. And he played his role in his time. And so now I'm second generation. I'm a Sag. but see, that's only, but anyway, that's a whole nother lecture. In terms of Sag, but I'm a Virgo. And so what I'm doing up here, I'm breaking it down. Virgos break that stuff down, right? Okay. Anyway, all right. So that's that, right? But that's key though, because Lagan is old school, and he will take you through changes. He'll act like, "What do you want? We do what?" So if you're not a true seeker, you're gonna miss out. Right. But that's a part of the teachings. Yeah. Like when you're trying to go in the Shaolin temple, it might make you go out there and sweep the front of the thing for 2 or 3 years before you get in. So those who ain't really dedicated, they don't get in. And it's okay. All right.
Brother Dadisi, I want to personally thank you for coming to Unity, and you gave me a tremendous amount of pleasure with the knowledge.
My pleasure.
And I want to ask you something about the future. Something about what's your opinion about cloning? Mm-hmm. You know, because they clone a lamb or something.
Right.
What you think about that? Cloning humans, you know.
It's back to this. The Europeans, in that state of mind, is diabolical. Okay? It's diabolical. And the whole thing about Frankenstein and all those kind of things, because their reference point is material, not spiritual. So then all those things are possible, and they will try to build a super race. They're going to try to do all that. It only will happen if we allow it to happen. Because remember, a greater consciousness will polarize a lesser consciousness. So all those things are signatures on the wall saying if we don't get our act together and resurrect our way of thinking, that then the negative will express itself.
That's right.
Would you say that's a good question?
A good question?
Yeah. About the clone.
Dadisi Sanyika.
All right. I will bring some of the books down to the Unity Center. So I guess by next Sunday they will be available here, and we can get them at the African Study Group also.
Bring one to your next dance class on Saturday.
Sure, I'll have them. Right. Okay.
Brother DC, do you have any more?
I think we're out.
And he'll be
For
here
here.
again July the 13th, so mark your calendars. Let's stand, please.